focus on that very practical and pragmatic, what is this and what's it all about. I thought we'd just start by flagging that big social shift, of which we know we are just a part, by sharing the short animation that we've prepared. I hope you could hear it all right.
Too much and for too long we have surrendered community values to the mere accumulation of wealth. These are the wise words of Robert Kennedy, spoken 50 years ago, and just months before his assassination. His speech was a rallying cry to change the way society measures progress, to stop basing prosperity on GDP growth that measures everything except that which makes life worthwhile. But little has changed. Today, our economy is still set out to put a value on war and natural disasters, on pollution and traffic accidents, on casino banking and throwaway coffee cups. But it doesn't count clean air or green spaces, decent jobs or strong communities. This has created great wealth for the few and left precious little for the rest. We've reached a point where the richest 1% have more wealth than the rest of humanity. And by only valuing what we consume, we are fast destroying the very planet we live on. In the last 50 years, academics, governments, and the UN have worked on new measures of prosperity, but a global solution could be a long time coming. Happy Cities Index makes global action possible right now. We know how to measure what really counts. So join us. Let's not wait another 50 years.
Thank you very much to Graham, who did the rather gorgeous, we really appreciate that. It's like crazy, publicising the amazing new book. So thank you very much for that. I hope that gives you a bit of a picture of where we've come from. And we set out in 2010 with that very big vision. Stiglitz, as reported here on the screen, had published a big report that year following the fallout from the terrible economic crash that we were all too aware of. It seemed finally the world was really waking up to the inadequacy of the current ways of measuring progress. And there was an exciting urgency in the air. It just felt like things were changing. But no one, including us, would have any kind of illusion that global or even national change would be quick. It's always going to take a very, very long time and an extraordinary level of consensus to start reshaping the economy at that kind of scale, to start shifting the balance of power we have in our system. But around about the same time, there was a really growing sense as well of the recognition of the importance of urbanisation. Local places, particularly cities where such huge, large populations are gathering, were increasingly becoming the kind of engines of change, a place where real innovation was happening. So the combination of these factors meant that we decided that's where we would start. Let's try and challenge this current paradigm, but let's start at the local level. What if we were able to develop a place-based model of change that would help make this kind of shift? one where we thrive, whether or not it grows. That's a small change, but it's a huge and important one. The Thriving Places Index is designed to show whether a place is delivering the right set of local conditions for people to thrive. That is absolutely the heart of the model. Are we creating the conditions for you, me, and everybody else to thrive? But to reduce that detail down to one headline could allow places to deliver great conditions for the few, or they could pollute the planet on which our well-being depends. Neither of which provide conditions for long-term local well-being. That's what we're talking about here. So crucially, really crucially for us, and the early days was a bit of a battle not to get it down to one figure. So crucially, the Thriving Places Index assesses whether we're creating those local conditions, but whether we're doing it equitably on that really strong social foundation of zone problems, and whether we're doing so within planetary boundaries, so not compromising the capacity of future generations to thrive. We're going to hear a lot about future generations later, so it's really, really important for this model. We can't ignore the well-being of future generations. Below those headline elements of local conditions, sustainability and equality, we split the index into a series of domains and subdomains. And as soon as you draw a picture, it starts to look complicated, but we've done that to help create a really compelling narrative and an instinctively understandable picture of that complexity of what it means to create the conditions for thriving. We currently only have 3 domains of inequality and sustainability, though we are really planning this year to strengthen both of those domains so that they have more of a depth of data within them. But within the local condition element, we have 5 domains, themselves separated into 19 different subdomains. We are not pretending that creating the right conditions for people is simple. Notions like GDP try and simplify it down to such a point that it hides too many important elements. So those 19 domains cover so many different things, including housing, mental health, good jobs, community cohesion, so much more. We've all got copies of the report, so I hope I have the old rubbish in there afterwards. Sam will go tell you much more about the methodology behind it in a moment, including where the data comes from, how it shows those indicators, all that sort of stuff. But suffice it to say, it's been an incredibly detailed process. We've input from all different sectors to help us deliver something people can actually use. And that is absolutely crucial to us, and I'm going to finish my section on. So we started with those very big picture aims. They're the driving force, they're still the driving force, the heartbeat behind our work. We want to make that really big system change. But we won't achieve any of those aims if what we develop isn't used. We've always known that. We've always tried to make it practical. There are already many ways in which the index is being used, and I just want to go through one or two. The first one comes partly from, I shared a very early draft of the report with John Hall, who worked over in New York, he writes a report around the human development index that we're going to be produced this year. I said to him in the draft, and he said, "Here's what I'm really excited about what we're doing, is that it's going to create," he said, "I know it's going to create new conversations across all divides." And the more he talked, the more I thought, you've got something in there, John. We talk about what's very practical, local government kind of uses to this, but actually this is really important, so I'm going to talk about it first. New conversations across all divides. That's partly about community divides. But actually, we need to get together as communities, different types of communities, diverse communities in those complex places that we call cities and towns and places around the UK. And let's talk about what really matters to us. This Thriving Places Index is supposed to be a reflection of what really matters to us. So let's have more of those conversations. Let's encourage people to use this as talking points. They might disagree with it, that's absolutely fine. We really encourage people to explore this. But let's use it in communities to really get people talking about what matters to us and what action we can take to improve our lives where we live. There's also sectoral divides. Let's work together to change things. No one sector can improve the lives of people in communities. We can't sit here using this to wave at the local authorities and tell them to sort things out. This is about all sectors taking responsibility. Good jobs are about better business that care about things. Like we're hearing a little bit more from Julia later on. So we need to be having those difficult conversations across those old divides sectorally. And even political divides. We're not supposed to mention politics or our charities, but I'm just going to mention the big word. Political divides, we spend so much time fighting about facts, we spend so much time fighting about details when it comes to politics. But how can we use this, at least locally, to say, here's a framework, it's going to be hard to disagree with. What politician is going to turn around and say, my well-being of people at Santa Monica. I'm like, yeah, that would do it for me. You know, I'd be very, very happy to talk to any local authority in the UK that could come to us in a few years' time, and they could get pretty much anyone in the city to say, yeah, my job, that's my job. Fantastic, big burly farmers saying, yeah, my job to improve the well-being of the people of Santa Monica. So that common currency idea is a really important one, and helping us to monitor progress towards it. Integrated and focused policy and action is another mouthful, isn't it? But I feel really passionate that well-being shouldn't be a niche, it's not a nice to have. In the early days of Happy City, I'd go on to some radio talk show and they'd say, what is all this happiness stuff? Haven't we got important things to worry about? I feel really, really strongly that well-being isn't a nice to have when we fix the important stuff. It is the important stuff. When we focus on that, we start fixing some of those huge challenges that exist in our community. I've got so many examples I can share with you, I would love to repeat later. The only one I'm going to share, because I've shared with some of you before, we did some work in some prisons a few years ago. It's quite intimidating. Very white, middle class woman walking into a sea of pretty tough ones in a male prison, talking about happiness. And they're locked up 22 hours a day. We had a couple of hour sessions talking about different aspects of holiday. One of them came up to me afterwards, actually very emotional, and said, Liz, if I'd known this 10 years ago, I wouldn't be in here. That's always stuck with me. This is not fluffy, nice to have stuff. When we look after people's well-being, give people the conditions to thrive, then we change their futures, we change the communities, and we change the opportunities, we change the economics. It's a knock-on effect. Well-being is deeply important to all aspects of our communities. I also think it's important in terms of this integration piece that we recognise that if we design streets for well-being, we change factors like the economy, we change transport, we change crime figures, we change health outcomes. All of those different aspects of what it means to be placemaking all come together when we focus on what it means for people to thrive. So let's break down those silos and start really focusing on the change we want to see. This is got to keep in mind, really not doing great. Really important to us is about sharing learning and best practice. This is about finding what's working in different parts of the country and shouting about it. So every place gets a kind of scorecard like this. We have a nice simple scorecard with a kind of, red, amber, green kind of thing. Now there isn't a place in the country that doesn't have something that where it's working. Let's find out what they're doing. Let's tell more people about it. Let's take the best of what's working in one place and share it somewhere else. Let's really, really, really focus on sharing that. We're hoping to be able to build in the next year or two with many of our partners a real portal of examples so people can look at those schools and then go straight through to find out what amazing things are they doing in Birmingham, or what amazing things are they doing in Bradford, or wherever else it is. Let's find out what they're doing, shout a bit more about it and spread it around the country. And finally, of course, creating momentum for bigger change. We do want individual places to improve using this index, but we also want to start creating that momentum. Our belief is that we can get in that local places around the country, really embedding this, really taking it seriously. We create a momentum for change that's quite hard to ignore even in our walls. It's very, very privileged to be here right in the heart of government. But actually, let's show those national leaders what it means to be innovative and to pioneer a different way of measuring progress. And finally, promise, it's not just a tool that can be used, it's a tool that is being used. We're already working with Wales. We developed this as an English set of indicators, because believe it or not, the data that people collect all over the country is really, really different. I have no idea how complicated it was when we started this out. But we've been working with the data unit of Wales and most of the Welsh government to adapt the same framework, the same vision, the same principles, but using the data context that's available in Wales. And we're going to be launching that in April, I think it is. So England today, April in Wales in April. And then we're also working with 5 areas across Wales in Wales, 5 different local authorities, really embracing this already and really embedding it into how they're working right across communities, right across sectors. We're training up their teams to be able to use the measures, understand them, embed them, etc., etc. They send out our happiness pulse to thousands of community partners. They're planning to use this in their own planning process and everything else. It's very, very real, and they're really, really excited about it. It's really bringing hugely cross-sector people together in those local authorities in every sector to work on this together. We've got plans for discussions with one or two of you in the world. I'm not going to name names, but we've got plans to be concentrate on what matters and remind ourselves what it's all for. I feel so strongly about this. What is politics, economics, business, education, health services, community, civil society, you name it, throw them at me. What are any of those things for, if not to help us to thrive now and in the future? I struggled to imagine another answer to that. We really hope this event and our wider work will help play a part in making that seismic, to be honest, it's not a small task, but very, very urgent shift in the coming years. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much. Well, after such a visionary and powerful talk, it pains me to kind of take a step back and talk about the nitty-gritty, but I do feel like it wouldn't do justice to the audience if we could say a little bit about how we produce this, because we don't want to just dazzle with numbers. We actually want to say how we've done this. In terms of, I mean, this has already talked about sort of the overall sort of the vision of what we're trying to achieve and the conversations we've had to try and get a sense of what's important. I think so in terms of actually identifying the indicators, boiled down to five key criteria. Availability, obviously we wanted to do something that we could use here and now. There are lots of lists of ideal indicators, but we want something that we can actually start to pull running, sort of get on the ground running already. We wanted data that was already available. We wanted things that were related to subjective wellbeing. So part of what we did was review the evidence around things which are related to subjective wellbeing. That didn't define things, it didn't sort of make it something that wouldn't be allowed in the private place index. There wasn't a sort of clear link to subjective wellbeing, but it was very important to define the sort of features and defining the indicators. It was an important criteria for us. Obviously, validity was important. We wanted to use data which, so most of the data comes from existing official government sources. We use data which has already been sort of, it's already been established and collected for years. It's when we use survey data, we're careful to use survey data only when the sample size is sufficient. So that's one of the reasons, for example, that we only go down to the county or the unitary authority level. We don't go down to district level, although we would like to put the data there and get a little bit more traction. So we did do that. Data is regularly updated. Obviously, it would be no good if you do this once and then nothing changes for 10 years. So most of our data can be updated regularly every year or by annual basis. So we can look at the change over time. It's important for policymakers or practitioners in the field. It's no good sort of talking about, if you're the mayor of a local authority or someone working in a particular direction, a particular area, it's no good being told that sort of back 10 years ago that's the story such a local authority had. You want to know something which is more up to date. And if you are trying to improve things, you'll love to see that improvement is having an impact. And of course, the last thing is, I think the most important thing, is it needs to be something that's amenable to local action. There's no point measuring something actually there's a sense that no one can actually do anything about it. So everything, all the indicators, I think, part of the process going forward is also about sort of understanding, mapping indicators to policies. There's a political debate there in terms of which things can be done. But I think that is an important crucial step. You need to know what the policies we need to do to improve each indicator. So those are sort of five sort of fairly sort of hard criteria. There was also something which I would call sort of indicator selection philosophy, which should shape our thinking as well. We wanted to look at drivers of inputs. So none of our indicators include sort of amount of money spent on health or amount of money spent on education, because that doesn't actually tell you what the success is. We want to look at drivers of well-being, not just how much money people spend on this. Asset-based, so we want to try and get a bit of a balance. I mean, one of the things that we were sort of things that we're building on, we were sort of starting from was things like the index of multiple deprivation, which is obviously immensely useful, immensely helpful tool for local authorities and because it goes down to very not just looking at unemployment, but also looking at good jobs as well. So we try to get a bit more balance of having more positive indicators. I think in a way, there's still work to be done on that front, and that, you know, that's about data availability. There are still things that we would have liked to include, but we didn't have positive indicators put in there. Interestingly, I think in Wales we have more of that sort of positive indicators. But hopefully we're moving in the right direction in data collection. Broader balance, obviously, you know, this is supposed to be a thriving test index to cover all the things that are important to people's lives. So it's quite a big set of topics. We didn't want to include 300, 400 indicators because that gets bewildering. We wanted to try and get it down to sort of a reasonable number, so we ended up with 48, so that kind of ballpark. So it meant that the indicators need to be carefully chosen. We didn't want to have 10 indicators on crime. We did at one point when we realised this was so we can't have 10 indicators on crime because it just overwhelms. You just got to move over. It's not very balanced. So then you have to try and find what are the best indicators that we use in that area. And university appropriate. We often have conversations, many of us, I guess people working in the city, working in cities, we have Ruth, who has as well a connection to rural background, so we also sort of visit a lot of partners who work in more rural areas, and so we want to make sure that the indicators we do university appropriate work just sort of reflecting reality for people who live in cities, or people who live in affluent areas, or people who live in the north, or people who live in the west. We want to make sure they're appropriate across the field. So I'm just going to flash through the methodology at this stage. I don't want to make too long, but just in terms of data collection, as I said, most of this isn't all our data sources, there are a few others. This is about 90% of the indicators come from, I think 40 indicators come from those 5 sources. So there are also those sort of very established data archives. So once we've got the data, one of the key things we have to do is standardize the data, because obviously all the indicators are measuring different things, different scales, percentages, parts per million, all sorts of difference to life expectancy in years. So lots of different scales. So how do we bring it all together? We use a fairly standard technique called standardization. The equation probably will only mean anything to maybe one or two people in the room. Just wants me to talk about it. Basically, what it means is you take any local authority, you compare that with the mean for England, so if the local authority scores the same as the mean for England, then it scores 0, we standardise. If it does better than England, then it gets a positive number, and if it does worse than England, it gets a negative number. So that gives you that sort of converts everything onto the same kind of scale. And obviously the bigger the number, the more further away from England it was. So that means that once you've done that, you can, as best as possible, compare apples and pears together. Which is important because we need to bring the data together to create an index. And this was done in several stages, so this is just an example. So these two indicators, the crime severity index, and you can anyway weight to our safety score. This was then combined with 3 other subdomains. Three other subdomains to make the place environment score, and that combined with the domains made the local issue score. So every time it's sort of combining sort of higher and higher level. Instead, I think that's kind of one of the things which is quite unique to the Thriving Place Index. We've got several levels. You can look at the indicator level, you can look at the overall, but you can actually look at there's a couple of levels in between as well. So it's quite a lot of flexibility in terms of how we're looking. We then calibrate the score, so as I said before, when you do standardization, if you score 0, that would be the average for England. You want to convert that to a 0 to 10 scale, so that was just simply like that. So then once you've done that, then if you score the average for England, then you're on 5. If you score a very, very high score, you can have deviation function in that England into, then you're at 10. And if you're very happy, you score 0, which you get the range to do. Just want to also say, I have said that we've used a lot of, we've used existing data, but there have been a few indicators we've either developed this or calculated based on existing methodologies. So the crime severity index is an example, actually, it's something that the ONS, the methodology the ONS developed, but they haven't applied it at the local authority level. So we have to do calculations to calculate the crime severity index at the local authority level. That basically combines all crime statistics, all the different kinds of crime into one index. But obviously, it sort of gives more severe crimes like homicide or violent assaults a higher weighting than less severe crimes, such as possession. So that's an example where we're using this methodology, but we don't have to do the calculation. So there are other examples. For example, the bottom is the adult lifelong learning percentage of labour force and good jobs. Those are indicators of what work potential and actually ONS at the Oxford National Statistics did the calculation for us. You put them in there, but they're new indicators as well. So that's yeah, 8 indicators, which I think are fairly new. So what does it all come down to now? Obviously, I think we all. Obviously, we don't want to dwell too much on the results because I think it's the results that will help kind of paint a picture and sort of put some flesh into this. But we're not. The idea here is to produce a rank, sort of a lead table and ranking and stuff. But I think it's just to give a little bit of flavour of what we've achieved. I don't have a map, so I'm always a bit nervous when I use these machines, but we'll see how it goes. So this is the map of the Urban Conditions Index, which in a way is the main part of the private place index. This is there are 3 aspects: local conditions, sustainability, and quality. And the local conditions is the one that's been most developed, which is sort of the progress, I would say. So this is going to combine all the indicators, sort of 5 domains, together, and you get this map. Now, I guess so a few things. There's a fairly familiar north-south divide. As you can see, there's more places that come out green towards the south of the country, and more places that come out red towards the top. Actually, not red. How do you do? Okay. These kind of maps can be a little bit misleading because obviously they're based on the size. But you can see the big rural areas very clearly. You can't see the urban areas very clearly because they're sort of they're very small. But obviously a lot of the population is in urban areas like London, etc. So I'm going to do my example. Anyway, so yes, the north-south divide is quite clear. One thing that sort of breaks that a little bit is West Midlands actually broadly does kind of, so scores in West Midlands are actually closer to the North Midlands than they are to the South. So the region, the second sort of, the region which has some of the worst scores is actually West Midlands. Then another thing to note is the rural-urban divide. So rural areas, I think this is sort of, seeing other indexes as well, rural areas are tending to do better than urban areas, although again there are some exceptions to that. In terms of exceptions in the north-south divide, you can see, for example, that one of the sort of large areas of green in the north is North Yorkshire there, also York. So there are some places in the north which is growing higher. What else can I say? Within London, where we are now, there's also quite a mixed pattern. And again, you can see some patterns which may be familiar with, obviously sort of out of London generally scoring higher, and in London, East London, but also sweeping all the way down to sort of Kensington and Chelsea and Westminster, scoring quite low on the local conditions index. However, that's prices that are scoring in London. So that's the sort of overall picture. Sorry. Then I want to go into some of the different domains. So the domain which sort of most closely mimics the overall score is the mental and physical health domain. That's sort of the domain which correlate, which sort of I guess in ways is the most standard domain from what we've got. Has a lot of indicators for people to familiar with. So that has a similar picture. Actually, you can see the north-south divide even more sharply here. I guess you can see a lot of even quite rural areas in the north coming out orange there. But some of the other domains which in the index I think present a more interesting picture. So let's just figure out how to get okay. So people community, for example. To Leicestershire. Okay. Anyone live in Leicestershire? Anyway, so people community is an interesting. This does have include quite a few different indicators. So we've got the RSA Heritage Index in there, which has participation heritage activities. Jonathan is here been involved in that. We've got a measure of social fragmentation in there. So a lot of the indicators in here are not seen in many other sort of approaches, and you get quite a different pattern here. So actually the area which scored highest in England, and this is one of those examples where we can take learning from places which are doing well or some things. The local project which has the highest score here is Herefordshire. You can see Cornwall, which is there. And you can see Cornwall and Devon are also doing very well on digital community domain. So they don't do well in all the other domains, but particularly well in these. So gives you some lessons and opportunities to learn from that. Place environment is another one which presents slightly different pictures from the standard. So that includes housing, safety, transport, and local environment. And for example, you'll see that maybe it doesn't look so stark here, but actually North East does quite well in us. So of the regions it comes third, and some of those cases do very well in the North East. Actually, Wirral, for example, is actually Wirral in the North West has the highest score case and environment. So it presents some interesting sort of findings which allow us to start to explore why are these places doing well? Are there things? Is there something which is unique to that place that can't be emulated, or are there some lessons that we can learn? I think in all cases a little bit of both there. So there's lots of different. I've just shown you some of the domains, but obviously that similar things you can do with the website with the scalability as well. I'm sure all of you, when you go back, when I go back to my future at home, I'll go through this much better than just a lot of maths. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So. Okay. So this gives a little bit of summary of local conditions. So we've broken out by regions as well, and you can see that each domain is a different story. So the North East, for example, does do quite poorly on many domains. It does worse overall as a region, so then just to help its mind out, there are 9 regions in England. But it comes third in terms of place environment. London presents a very extreme pattern where you've got place environment, people, community, ranking 9 for both those, but then it comes second for education learning and working with local economy third. So everywhere has a strong points and weak points, and that's kind of one of the key things we want to bring out this. And the Southwest, based, top of the community, second place environment, actually the most balanced, different region with the most balanced well, I guess. So compared to London, which does very well from there, very poorly balanced. One of the things I want to do is compare, just to mention a little comparison with the index of multiple deprivation, which some of you may be familiar with, maybe using your work. There is a high correlation between what we're producing and, well, the local condition index and the index of multiple deprivation. But there are some quite big differences that we saw. We sort of tried to identify what are the places which do much better in the thriving places compared to the IMD, which places do much worse. And we did find some clear patterns. So the biggest risers of local condition index compared to the IMD, these 6 places, Lambeth, Southwark, Brighton, Hove, Harrington, Forest, Lewisham. So you can see 5 of those in London, and actually most of those 5 are sort of inner city London areas. None of them do fantastically well on the local condition index, but they do much better than they do in the index of multiple deprivation. So for example, Lambeth comes to 72nd out of 150. It's about halfway through the table on the local condition index, where it's about 40 places below that in terms of the index of multiple deprivation. So why do these places do better? Well, we sort of try to look sort of domain by domain to see what scores are sort of driving that. And obviously, there are indicators that we use which are also learning, but then we've got a lot of other things as well. And the education and learning seems to be one of the key areas which show you why these places are doing better in private places index, but also work in local economy. We have some new indicators there which are before, which is local business score, which shows how many businesses are local and not chains, and also an indicator of good jobs. And those two, for example, we saw a lot of the London boroughs did very well, and so that brought them up. In contrast, big explorers compared to Landy, Dudley, West Midlands, Gateshead, Darlington, North elements on equality, local conditions and sustainability. And it does well in all the 5 domains. So it doesn't have the highest local condition score across the country, but it seems to be the most balanced performer on the Rapid Place Index. For example, sustainability. So actually, one of the things we've got saying is that most places that do well on the local conditions index are in places like Rich, Surrey, Berkshire, those kind of areas. So what's interesting, what separates, but those places don't do very well, or particularly don't do very well on sustainability, and they don't tend to do well always on equality. So the interesting thing is, why is Bath actually doing well on sustainability and equality as well as the local conditions index? It's well be claimed, but why is also scoring well on sustainability? And when you look at it, you can see that domestic energy consumption is 10% below comparable authorities. CO2 emissions 25% below national average, and weight of recycling is above average as well. So you can start to see sort of explain, explain those differences. Other areas that do quite well, so in terms of balanced performance, include Dorset and Devon. So you've got sort of actually quite a few in the southwest that do that. But income equality is 10% above the English average in Bath. So even one of these balanced performances, that there'll always be something that needs to be worked on. But health inequality is good, and well-being equality is good. That's what brings the overall quality score. Lambeth is another one of my favourites. I was down there. This is the next county in Bristol. So Lambeth, as I said, does much better on the local conditions index than on the IND, Economic Declaration. And in terms of understand why that is, well, for example, it's got the highest score for adult education, so that's essentially people who are taking part in adult education, it's the highest score across the whole country. Sixth highest score in terms of local business, and you can see that when you look at that page, you can see how much, it's not full of chain stores, I guess, and then improvements made there. And 11th highest in transport, well, kind of not surprisingly in the city London area, but obviously London. But of course, the point with the private places index is to glorify these places. Also, there is, it is fit for a lot in terms of safety, important for lots in terms of housing, so it does identify the areas. And then lastly, Manchester. Manchester, which comes fifth from bottom in terms of local conditions, so it's one of the lowest scoring places. A lot of big cities do poorly on both the IND and private places index, and many of these. But even in Manchester, you can sort of pull out some positive stories in there. So, for example, it does score high on areas like transport, adult education, culture, and it does actually, for a place like Manchester, it's probably more interesting to compare with similar places like Liverpool or Leeds rather than just comparing with national average. And so, from Manchester, you can see it actually does better than Liverpool, Birmingham, those kind of places on transport, adult culture, adult education and culture, and also just very well on sustainability as well. So, every place has some issues for us to have. I probably told you that.
underpinned by a range of measures to monitor how Scotland is creating conditions for people to prosper in a range of areas of life.